Hi, this is Vicky from Bergman-Ward Leeds. I'm here with our senior teacher, Kristen Bergman-Ward. Welcome
Thank you.
to our first ever yoga talk show. So today we're going to talk about intensity in your yoga practice. What is it and why do you want it? So I thought that I would let Kristen start by talking about the three elements of yoga practice. We've written them up here.
Yeah, we just put them up here on the wall just so we can keep referring to them today during our conversation. So basically, these are three elements of a yoga practice that this comes from a very senior teacher, Emmy Cleaves, and she is basically Bikram's sort of right-hand woman. She has been practicing his yoga longer than anyone I know, pretty much, apart from him. And
she's older than the hills.
is I think 93 now. She was leading the advanced series 3 days a week up until very, very recently, if she isn't still doing it at Bikram's headquarters. So, but when she visits teacher training, and she does that for usually about 2-week stints on the teacher training, she spends a lot of time talking to the group about the three aspects of a yoga practice that not just as teachers, but as practitioners, we should look to develop over time. So we wrote them up. They're frequency, precision, and intensity. So frequency is very obvious what that is. It's just the regularity of a yoga practice. Ideally, a yoga practice is a daily thing. At first, that's sort of hard to conceptualize, but what you'll find over time as you get into a more daily yoga practice is that it starts to become a little bit like you don't feel like you've woken up until you've practiced your yoga. And it starts to become a little bit almost like such a maintenance part of your day that it's as essential as brushing your teeth, having a shower. You know, that's definitely probably how you feel and I feel, and a lot of students over time feel. Maybe not in the beginning, but over time. Precision refers to technique, really, just making sure that the way you're executing a posture is the proper way to execute a posture. So the more that you start to fine-tune the technique of a posture, the more benefit you start to get out of a posture. And so that becomes important when you're looking to practice on a daily basis. It's important anyway, but it's especially important when you're looking to apply that every day, trying to get full benefit out of what you're doing. And intensity it's also pretty obvious, but it refers to the amount of effort that you put into a practice. So it pulls us out of that sort of lazy mindset and really forces us to engage with the practice in a deeper level. So
that's what intensity is.
Yeah.
So something that somebody said to me, I think at my training or at the workshop, I don't remember, was that the intensity quite often with the Bikram practice, because of how it's taught, is you don't need to do very much. All you need to do is to step into the room, because the intensity, it's already there.
It is, yeah.
With the instructions that we give, the dialogue where we tell people to push, do this, do that.
Yeah.
The intensity is kind of already there for your daily practice.
With the heat, as almost more than anything from your very first class, that's what you notice. And that's, the heat serves a lot of purposes, and the way that the class is delivered as well serves a lot of purposes. One thing that people notice from very early on is that as soon as they go in and take class, the fact that the room is so hot and we're doing, they're quite simple postures. There isn't much that's very complicated. It's a very accessible series, but the heat really forces you to focus. You really have to focus on how you're breathing in order to overcome that sort of heart racing reaction that sometimes it goes to the mind, where we have that fleeting thought of, I just got to get out of here, or this is just too much, or what am I doing, or I can't do this. There's a lot of,
why did I do this to myself
why
again?
am I doing this to myself again? Yeah. And that changes over time. But even I would say the most experienced students, every once in a while, myself included, have those fleeting thoughts.
Every now and then. Yeah.
But I think with intensity, I say that it's obvious. You look at the word and you think, okay, it's obvious what that means. But in terms of a yoga practice, what we do when we stand in place on our mat, and as you said, the room throws a lot of things at us, the way the class is delivered, the heat itself, the postures in the heat, out of the heat, they may not feel so intense. But underlying the whole yoga practice is also a focus on the breath. And that can kind of sound generic because you hear that all the time, focus on your breath, focus on your breath. But actually that is what allows us to get full benefit out of our practice. You can't just be intense, muscle your way through a practice and expect to get anything but, to be honest, totally injured or completely put off the practice. It's when the body, when we can have such a focus on such awareness of breath, such a conscious overriding of the body's tendency to go into kind of fight or flight or adrenaline rush. When we can override that and still work hard in our postures, the body enters like a new place where it starts to be really open to change. And so behind that effort that we put in, we're trying to remain completely relaxed. And that, the way that we breathe sends a message to our nervous system.
To the brain.
To the brain, exactly. That it can relax even though we're in a place where we're uncomfortable. Maybe we have sweat dripping up our nose and we have to really focus on how we breathe. There's a level of discomfort behind it. There's a level of struggle behind it. But can we remain relaxed as we work hard?
I think that place that we're looking for, that is really the place where our mind is in a meditative state.
Completely, yeah.
And I think that it's been measured, even the brain frequency, the way that the brain waves are at that stage makes your brain extra susceptible to learning new things.
Very pliable, yeah. And it's being in the moment. When we're in the moment, the brain is very pliable. When we're in the moment, we don't think about being in pain. We don't think about a lot of negativity that can get in the way of what we're doing.
I think it's also referred to as neuroplasticity, isn't
it? Yeah, you're right. It is. The brain is plastic.
Yeah.
The brain is very much as the body is. We're working through the repetition through the frequency of the practice, the precision of the technique, the effort we're putting behind the practice. We're changing ourselves on more levels than just the physical. That's been scientifically proven now.
This is the why.
Yeah.
Why do you want these three things? Why do you want these aspects to be in your practice? Well, this is kind of a big why. So how? That's the other question. How do you get that intensity? So one of them, yes, like we said, is to step into the room with some frequency, practice with precision, your daily practice, but beyond that, so other things that you can do to achieve intensity in your practice. So we're talking or thinking about a little bit about homework and things to do outside of the normal class.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is homework? You mentioned the word homework. Homework is a term that I've adopted from my teacher, Mary Jarvis, and where she got it from, I don't know. It may be something that she's made up on her own. That's always the impression I've had. Maybe something that came to her from
School?
Other teachers as well. Yeah, and it's definitely from when we're kids in school, obviously. But how have we then applied that to a yoga practice? And so, there's several exercises that you can do outside of your normal in the studio class practice to find even more frequency, precision, and definitely intensity in the practice. And the things that I've been introduced to over time are things like deep repetitive back bends, so wall walks down the wall, things like lunges that strengthen the lower body, and repetitive back to back so that you're building a huge amount of stamina in the body. Things like that you can bring in either before class or after class. Some people, before and after class, class has a certain structure, and we as students stick to that structure of the class. Teachers as well stick to that structure of the class, but there's time before and after class. There's a lot that you can do within a 5-minute period.
When the hot room is actually available to you as a student.
Exactly,
it's available for half an hour before or half an hour after. You can do what you like.
You can. So it's one thing doing homework when you're not in the heat. It's one thing doing that when you're at home, and then you have space between doing that homework and coming in for class and taking class. You're body has a chance to cool off, recover a little bit. It's a whole other thing to do that homework immediately before you go in and immediately before you start your practice.
So you can do it either at home or you can do it in the hot room.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you really prime the body. When you first start doing that, when one first starts doing that, usually you stand up, you do your first breath of pranayama, and you think to yourself, I'm not so sure how this class is going to go, because you're so hot already. Your body is so primed.
You've been doing your homework
because you've been doing your homework first. So it definitely has to be sort of a weaning on process, unless you really want to throw yourself in at the deep end. But absolutely, I mean, you build a certain amount. The class is all you need. You know, really, if you're doing the class every day, you don't need anything else. But if you want another level of intensity, if you want to build a little more strength or really start to change the way that your body can move, your range of motion, for instance, then adding a little bit every day, before ideally, and also after class, is a great way to do it. Yeah.
I had a brief period when I was very good with my homework. That's before I had a studio.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Now I tend to be too caught up with what's going on here.
Yep.
But I had a brief period where I was very good at my homework, and I was doing not really long stints, but I was doing maybe around 15 minutes before each class that I did.
That's a big deal.
And yeah, it was a big deal because it really made my classes feel different.
Yeah.
And I don't actually remember feeling that I was tired or exhausted going into class, but I was practicing a lot.
Yeah.
But I remember the classes feeling really different.
Yeah.
From the very fast half moon that I would go into, I would feel like, oh, wow, this feels different. Space.
A lot of space in the body.
So much space. And also from the fast standing head to knee, because my hamstrings were warmed up, and I didn't have to struggle with the flexibility.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much to struggle with in standing head to knee.
Yes.
So you already have enough to think about.
Yeah.
But without having that hamstring tightness to struggle with, I could do so much more. So,
there's a lot to be said for getting that sort of level of inflexibility out of the body, and then going in and taking class. Your body doesn't fight against itself.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Or your mind and your body, I guess, because it's more the mind you're approaching it with. They're not fighting each other in class. You're able to almost will your body to do the things that you wish you could before, and you were fighting for before. Now all of a sudden it's there.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to be said for finding some extra stuff to do before class, building that intensity in the class, but then actually being able to relax a little more in the practice itself. Do you know what I mean? Because you've done a lot of the work already. So absolutely,
So apart from this homework that you can do before and after class, you can do it at home, I also wanted to talk a little bit about an intense practice that you do in one block.
Yeah.
So it sounds a bit crazy, like practicing yoga for, what is it, like 6, 7, 8 hours in a day?
Yeah.
It sounds impossible.
Yeah.
Like if you've done a few Bikram classes before, it definitely sounds like mad.
Yeah, no, I know.
But I have done it, and I'm a bit of a lazy person myself, but I've done it several times myself.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty awesome. So you've been teaching some yoga intensives.
Yes.
In a few different places before?
Yeah. I've taught some yoga intensives. Well, I started out teaching them at my now husband's studio in Richmond. In the very beginning, I used to run the intensives as a full week, and the deal was that if you were in it for the full week. You took your time off work. You didn't have appointments that you had to go to. If you were in it, you did the whole group did absolutely everything together.
Wow.
And they were incredibly successful.
Well, like full time, all day for a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's pretty unrealistic to expect people to commit to that who aren't teachers. Even as a teacher, it's hard to find that time.
Yeah.
But definitely if you have a full-time job and children and a partner and that sort of thing, it's a little tricky. Life gets in the way of a full-time yoga practice. So then they became weekend events, and now I run also day events. So I've run, a couple of intensives in Dublin with my sort of yoga sister, Fiona. She's the former Irish yoga champion and has a studio out there now, Dublin City Bikram Yoga. And I've also run a yearly weekend intensive in Oxford, at Yoga Venue Oxford. And now I'll be doing one here as well. So that'll be the first one that we've held here in Leeds. I'm really excited about it. The 5th of May, which is the first bank holiday in May on the Sunday. What's nice about practicing as a group like that is it's near impossible, even as a teacher, even when you've gone through years of training, years and years and years, maybe 2 decades of practice. It's very difficult to just choose for yourself to practice in that way, even for a day, let alone for a whole weekend or a week or longer. So the idea with it is to bring together a group of people who are like-minded, who are really interested in creating some form of shift in their practice. But they come for lots of different reasons. So some people feel that they're quite stuck. There are long-term yogis who just can't get their spine to move anymore, or they can't figure out a posture, or maybe something's hurting and they don't think it should be hurting, or something like that. Some people come when they feel a little bored, and somehow I managed to convince people, because I really believe in it, that when you're bored with your yoga practice, the best thing to do is do more.
Do more yoga.
And learn, go out of your way
Very
to
true.
learn something about your practice and about who you are in your practice. When I would get bored, I remember back in the day when Mary had her studio in San Francisco, that's what I would do. I would make sure I had got some time off teaching. I'd board a plane to San Francisco. Sometimes, maybe shouldn't be saying this on a video, but sometimes I'd even sleep on the floor in the changing rooms, just to be there and do like 2 or 3 yoga classes a day, extra training with Mary. And that I would always, even though physically that was such an intensive time, focus, big time frequency and precision as well, I would leave from that week or 2 feeling just so excited about the yoga, so excited about teaching again and practicing, and want to sort of continue with that momentum. And so that's basically what we do in an intensive. We have a full day that we dedicate to our practice, and within that time, we go to, it's a variety of people who come together as well. So you have teachers, you have sometimes yoga champions in the room. Sometimes you have students who've only been practicing a few months. Sometimes it's students who are 10 years in.
I think that's important.
That's really
to mention that it's not just something that you do because you've been practicing so long and it's the only thing that's left.
Not at all.
This is also something when you haven't even practiced that long yourself.
Yeah.
That you can get loads out of.
A ton out of, because all of it really is very, very, it's okay, is very, very basic. It's just repetitive moves, But I also get, and I think this is what's super interesting, is a lot of people who choose to do these intensives sometimes are quite sick. So sometimes they have really severe rheumatoid arthritis and they're just absolutely desperate to get out of pain. Sometimes they have a major lower back problem and they heard that back bending is really therapeutic. Sometimes they're recovering from cancer, or they've had a recent diagnosis, and I've had people really do
even
this.
though you are not 100% healthy. It's still something
you
that's
really,
accessible.
really can get a lot out of it. And so my only condition is that if you're a part of it, you're there for the whole day. Even if you can't do everything, you're there as part of the group.
And it's totally okay to not.
It's totally
to
fine
not do
to
everything
take a break.
if you feel like it's too much. You don't have to.
Absolutely, with everything I teach, that's the goal, is to just be there and do what you can.
And I think there's something to be said for the time that you spend practicing, and it's a tendency of recent years that things tend to be shorter and shorter with yoga. It used to be that the Bikram class, it was always 90 minutes, had to be 90 minutes, and there was nothing less than that. But then when things started to kind of open up and shift in the Bikram community, more and more classes are 1 hour, because it's more accessible to people, and it's easier for people to fit it into the day, and that's completely understandable. And of course, it's the most important thing is that people are able to come in and do their practice. So if we can make that happen by making a shorter class, then we will do. But there's really something to be said for the time that you spend, not just in terms of the body opening up, but the place where your mind goes. What we were talking about before, your mind needs that time. That's why the 90-minute class is so good, because it takes your mind at least 45 minutes to an hour to switch off. And then it's the last half hour where you practice in that state of mind, where you have the neuroplasticity, where your brain is able to soak up things.
Completely.
So when you do a long, intense practice, you have so much longer to be in that state and to be learning in that state.
You do. You absolutely do. Yeah.
When your mind is susceptible to it, and your body is too.
Absolutely. And when you get into that place, you learn a lot of the tools that you need for your practice. So there's some things that maybe you wouldn't even touch upon within a 90-minute class or an hour class. But when you go and do that second class of the day, or maybe you go and do some extra back bends after that, you do reach a point where you're required to have a level of mental will and stamina at that point that maybe you've never even touched before. You know, maybe the class hasn't challenged you enough to get you to that point of, I need to choose. You know, I need to make this conscious choice for myself, almost a declarative statement for myself that I am doing this thing. And a lot of people they start out just as they did in their very first class, thinking, I don't know if this is for me, I think this is too hard, I'm not sure I should be doing this, is this good for me?
Something else that we didn't touch upon, how to get your intensity, is that not just by coming and doing your daily practice and a bit of homework, you can do this yoga intensive, which is like maybe a big jump. Another way is, of course, to go in and do a double.
Yeah,
or
absolutely,
triple,
yeah.
Or even more, practice the whole schedule for a full day.
Yep.
This is always available to you. You know, you guys have unlimited, if you're on your injury, you have unlimited yoga. If you're on a monthly unlimited, you have unlimited yoga. You can always come and do that.
Yeah, I've done that before, right before my teacher training. And as is my husband, he's done it twice. We had a handful of students in Richmond who did the full schedule for a week. And it's such an interesting process, you know, that day 2, waking up, getting yourself in for that early morning class, and then realizing that actually the class makes you feel so much better. And once you've done it, you're so
You don't have to do the full schedule. You can do just like, you can do it in different ways. So you can do like, wake up, do the early morning, have a break coming for the lunchtime. So then you've done your double, or do 2 back-to-back in the evening or on the weekend. When we have 2 back-to-back, you have a short break, do the next one, and see, you know, where that next class takes you to, because your mind, your body, you've had that time.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. You know, something else we didn't really talk about is, in so many ways, what the Bikram series offers us is really classical yoga. You know, really at the heart of so many of the different things that we can get out of a yoga practice. The foundations of a yoga practice are so within the series. And the fact that we're using the mirrors and the heat and bringing ourselves to that point of discomfort, it really forces us not just to focus on how we breathe, but also to focus on who we are sort of in that situation. Do you see what I mean? And so we have a really good, when you go back to like what the ancient yogis talked about, how every time we take class, we're confronted by our karma, you know, and it's so interesting when we walk into the room and as new students, we feel all the aches and pains in our body. So it's very much on a physical level in the beginning. We feel, I feel my knee, that was the time that I hurt myself in football when I was 10, 11 years old. Oh, I broke my leg, you know, oh, there's my shoulder, oh, there's my neck pain from all the days that I hunch and stress and, you know, and oh, I feel so dizzy opening my spine because I do this all the time. And so all of our past is there in that class, and we're looking at ourselves in the eye, ideally, and we're going through the motions of the practice. And so it's very confrontational, you know?
It is.
And confrontation isn't the nicest word to sort of hear and think about, and especially as a new student, but a lot of what that gives us is so much growth as a person. And
you don't have to call it confrontation, you can call it self-discovery as well. I sometimes say this, that the body is a 3-dimensional map of your life. Everything is in there. Everything. And when you start to practice, you get into your body and you feel these different things, and they are the story of your life, of your past, of your present. They're all there, and they all come up.
They do.
At the same time, you have the huge mirrors in front of you, and you're watching yourself go through this process. And I think it creates something like sympathy for yourself.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. And you do have to start with yourself with all of that, you know. So you start to see people really start to soften through this process as well. It's really interesting how that class can get you there.
And a level of self-acceptance. I
Yes.
think that's interesting that we often see is when people first come to practice, they might come and they're wearing long leggings and a big t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit hiding in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that same person, you see them 6 months later, and they're in the front, and they look super comfortable. They're wearing a crop top. They might not be the slimmest or youngest. They're wearing shorts as well, and they're fine.
And they're fine.
They're not hiding anymore.
Not
they
at
don't
all.
feel the need to hide
Not at all.
anymore.
It's
They're
really
there
beautiful.
confronting themselves in the mirror,
Yeah.
and with the level of self-love.
It is, yeah. It's really a beautiful process.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's all available. You know, whatever the reasons that someone has for coming in and taking class, you know, some people want to lose weight, some people want to de-stress, some people want to recover from a illness or an addiction or something. Whatever the reason is, you'll find it in the room through the practice. You don't even have to think about it. You just have to come and do the effort and find some nutrition and intensity. But then you find so much more as well. You know, if you stick with it, there's so much available
But you will find.
that you find.
That
yeah.
you will find.
That you
but
weren't
need to apply
expected. Yeah.
these three. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll round it up there with talking about intensity, and
Sounds good.
we'll come back to some other aspects
Yeah.
at a later date.
Yeah. We'll have another conversation soon.
Thank
for
you so
everyone.
much,
Thank
Kristen.
you. Thank you. It's been really
And
nice
we'll
for me.
see you all in the hot room.
Yeah. See you guys soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.